It has been quite a while on this show where I have taken the time to share my faith journey. And if you've been following me for a while, you know that I have had like all the different things that have happened in life, and I've gotten the most amazing stories to tell about, the things that God has done in my life, but also like the journey that I have been on with him. Now, we're probably going to have to break this up into like multiple episodes because obviously I'm 42 years old. And so I've been on a journey for like all these years. And I'm going to have to try to like condense this down. But for those that are brand new, but those that have been here for a while, you're like, oh yeah, I know that story. I know that story. So today on the You, Me, and Jesus podcast, we're going to talk all about my faith journey. So welcome back to another episode of the You, Me, and Jesus podcast. We are here every single Sunday on the podcast and on YouTube going through my, journey with God, right? That's why we call it the You, Me, and Jesus podcast, because it's you, it's me, and it's Jesus. And so when I was thinking about this topic, the topic makes me happy when I think about it because it has been quite the whirlwind of a journey when I just think about all the things that have happened in my life and experiencing like God in all the different aspects that he is. And so I want to there's so many things I can share today, but I don't want to make this like a 2 hour long podcast. So I'm going to turn it into like snippets of like stuff, but I will put my finger on something that is strong, or if I feel the Holy Spirit like touching on something, I'll stay there for a while. But otherwise, I'm going to try to go through life. Okay. So the way to get this started is that we grew up in church. So it was just kind of like a thing that we were told to do. Every Sunday, we always went to church. We were in the choir and then we served and we just did stuff. It's just how we were raised. It's not like we had the greatest Christian household. I love my mom, I love my dad, whatever, but it was just the thing that we did on Sundays, okay? Didn't mean we had a great relationship with God or that we were good Christians. It just meant that's what we did. And so that's just kind of what we did. And even when I went off to college, nobody was telling me what to do. Nobody was telling me to go to church. And of course, as soon as I got to, University of Louisville, found a church and started going to church. And guess what I did after that? Joined the choir and started serving and doing all the things, just doing all the things. And it's just what I did, right? And I will say that when I actually started going on this personal journey with God, it wasn't until I left my home, like Kentucky, and moved to Richmond, Virginia. And as soon as I got there, I found a really big church and I started going to that church. And guess what I did when I started going to that church? I joined the choir because it was just what I did. And there was a turning point. And the turning point that there was this guy named Ron Edwards. Ron Edwards, he's funny. He's just a great guy, funny guy, married, all the things, And at the time, I was interested in him. I didn't know a whole lot about him. I knew he was kind of like a ladies' man or whatever, but I was still interested in him. And he and his best friend, Jamal, they were talking about Lent. I was very new to Lent. I was like, people put ash on their forehead and all this stuff. Didn't know much about it. But they were talking about going on a 40-day fast. And so I said, well, I'll fast with you guys. And they were fasting random things. He was fasting sex. Even though we weren't supposed to be having sex anyway before marriage, that's what he chose. I chose potato chips, candy, and I think it was TV for 40 days. Didn't really understand what I was doing. I just knew that I wasn't doing that for 40 days. And at the end of the 40th day, I was sitting at my church and he started talking about tithing. And I just had this impression that I should tithe. And that would have been my very first time giving 10% of my income. And it was such a risk. It was such a big thing to do. But I was just felt like I should do this. And while I was doing that, I heard a voice say, "This is your last Sunday." And I remember looking up, looking around, looking to see who said that, looking at the pastor and realizing he is not talking about that. He's not talking to me. He's not talking about last Sundays. And I'm just like, I just heard a voice. What is going on? And I was freaked out. But the crazier thing was that I trusted the voice. And so I became very emotional. And I remember for the next couple of days, I was overcome with emotion because I was going to leave that church, but I did not know where was I supposed to go. I just felt so lost. And I went to Bible study that night. I got there early and I was sad. I was walking around the front of the church and I just can see myself right now. I was sad because I was going to leave this and I didn't know what I was leaving or why I was leaving it or where I was supposed to go. And at some point in time, I said, during that day or that week or whatever, I said, well, where am I supposed to go? And then I felt like I got this impression or whatever. And there was this girl named Keiko. She's still around. And she had invited me to go to this other church a while back, but we never made it. And I felt like I heard the voice say, go to that church. Go check that church out. And I was like, sure, no problem. So that Sunday, I go to that church. And I am somebody who I get distracted easily. So I always sit up front so that way I'm not getting distracted by everybody behind me. So I sit up front and that service was being ran by the young adults. And I was just like, oh, it's going to be a typical young adult service, whatever. It was more than that. Felt like I was having this like out of body experience watching them lead this service. I was in awe of what I was experiencing watching them do this service and, watching how I felt during this service. And I joined that church that day. I was like, out of that one into this one. Yes, let's go. And I remember just trying to, connect with people, going to different things or whatever. But it wasn't until one Sunday I decided I wanted to go and meet the pastor because you could it's kind of a unique church the way they do what they do, but it is what it is. And you will kind of wait in line. People were trying to meet the pastor, whatever. And so I was waiting in line to meet the pastor. And then somebody comes up to me and says, hey, you want to get filled with the Holy Spirit, right? And I was like, no, I want to meet the pastor. And they said, no, you want to get filled with the Holy Spirit. And I was like, no, I don't. And they was like, yes, you do. And I was like, what? So they pull me out of line and they take me to a lady. And I was Pastor Elder Mitchell. Remember her name? I was so afraid of her. She was so tall. I was just afraid of her. Elder Mitchell, she was just, I was afraid. But I went up to her and they told her that I want to get filled with the Holy Spirit. And I was like, this was not my idea, but whatever. And so she's like walking with me and trying to help me like release the ability to like pray in tongues, speak in tongues. And I was just like, what is wrong with these people? But she was so kind and she was so patient that I was just trying, and I can't say that I experienced anything. I can't remember that. But over the next couple of weeks, I was at some different events with some of the young adults and they would always pray in tongues at the end. And I was just like, what is going on? These people are weird. I like these people, but they can get real weird at different times. And so I was just like, well, I'll just ignore all that. But went to church one Sunday and then the pastor was like, everybody stand up, everybody pray in tongues. For whatever reason, he felt like was going to do what it was going to do in the service. I stand up with everybody else and I'm just like, we're just going to try this because I don't really know. Man, it came out and I was just like, okay, something is happening. And that is when everything changed. I mean, everything. Like, when you see those movies and you're like, everything changed. I am not kidding. There was a time when I was just starting to experience like dreams. I didn't know what was happening. I was in the choir and it was like a praise team. It wasn't like a choir, it was like a praise team. And I was up there worshiping. And all of a sudden I see these 3 dark figures flying in the air. And I am like, what are y'all doing here? But I was feeling this moment where I was very angry that they were there. And I felt like compelled to fight against them. But I feel like I lost consciousness in some way, form, or fashion, because I am there fighting what I am seeing, but I'm in front of hundreds of people at the same time, but I forget that I'm in front of the people and I am doing what I am doing to the figures that I can see. And then eventually I snapped out of it and I came to, and I was just like, I couldn't figure out what happened. And from there, I just got very curious. And I was just like, whoa, what is going on? God, what is happening? I started asking God questions about, like, I don't believe in Jesus, really. Like, that he was born of a virgin and that he died and this stuff happened because of he died. I was just like, I started to question everything. Not in a way where it was like, I don't want to be a Christian. It was in a way of, I was deconstructing everything I had ever been taught and say that I believe, but I knew that I did not believe it. I was deconstructing it and was just kind of like going on this journey of like, prove it to me, prove it. Does that make sense? And one day I had invited this girl to come live with me because her mom had passed. She comes home and she's like, hey, I got something for you. And I was like, what is it? And she handed me a book about angels. And I was just like, because I was just telling God that I don't believe in angels. And I was just like, oh my God. So then I start reading this book about angels and I am like in shock. I go to church another Sunday and that lady that like prayed for me to get filled with the Holy Spirit, she hands me a book about angels and I'm just like, what is happening? And I start having this like conversation with God about Jesus. It was like, I don't believe that Jesus, like all this stuff happened to him. And because he was hung on a cross that now my sins are forgiven. I was like, I don't believe it. Like I need you to like prove to me that he was who you are saying that he is and not me just believe it because it's what everybody says. You know what I mean? And then my roommate comes home one night and she goes, God told me to give you this. It was the Passion of Christ. And I was like, I'm not watching that. Because I had heard about people just like breaking down in movie theaters, like just like all the things, watching Jesus just get whipped. And I was just like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle that, So it took me a while to watch it. And eventually I watched it. It didn't move. I was sad to see that happen to a person, but it didn't move me like spiritually, so to speak. But what happened after that? Man, there's just so much stuff just started to happen. I know what happened. So then I was at that church now for probably 3 years and I'm on this journey. I'm in all the classes, reading all the things. I'm just like on this journey of deconstructing what I have believed as a Christian. And finally one Sunday, the pastor was a very unique pastor. He was I don't want to speak against the man, but good God. I'm like, anyway. So one Sunday he said something. Well, no, I was feeling like God was telling me to leave that church, but I felt like I was offended and I was like, I don't want to leave because I'm offended. I want to leave because God is asking me to go. And so one Sunday I'm at church and he says something and I hear God say, get up and leave now. And it took me like a couple seconds. I grabbed my umbrella and I got up and I left. And then I never went back. And I was like, where am I supposed to go? And I knew about this other church. And I was like, I'm going to go there that Sunday. And so I went that Sunday. And of course, I joined that same Sunday. And that church took me on a Holy Spirit journey. Okay. Where one of my Sundays, I'm standing there and I'm worshiping and I'm crying and I'm just worshiping or whatever. Like one of my favorite Jesus songs. And I hear somebody say, you're here because I'm here. You would have thought I was on an episode of The Exorcist. I am standing like this, worshiping, just worshiping. And I hear, you're here because I'm here. My eyes opened, hands went down, and I took a long time to turn my head. And I was just like, who was that? And there was nobody there. But I knew it was Jesus. And I just bawled my eyes out. And I just knew that it was Jesus. And then I started going on this like intense journey of faith where I remember feeling like wind on my hands and heat on my hands and electricity in my body and like going through classes, learning how to lay hands on people, how to let the power of the Holy Spirit to come from heaven into you, out of you, into somebody else, and like experiencing it and being like, I remember one Sunday I did it was like a 10-week class we had to do. And, they were like, okay, We were at service that night after we graduated and all that, and they were like, does anybody need healing in their bodies? People went up to the altar and they said, okay, if you have been here for all the Holy Spirit classes, come lay hands on somebody. They said, well, just stand behind them. Okay. And what they taught us was that don't push anybody. You don't have to put both hands. You just can barely touch them. And then whatever's going to happen from here, from heaven, it's going to come into you and it's going to go out of you. And I was just like, okay, whatever. Man. They said, okay, put your hand on their shoulder. I put my hand on that lady's shoulder. I could not control what was happening. The power was so strong. I was shaking. I was crying because it was so strong coming from down, out, and I was just shaking. I was shaking. And I was just like, I don't know if she is feeling anything, but I here am getting touched, you know? And that was like one of my first experiences of the power of God, okay? The power of God. And I'll never forget that. I will never forget that experience, which has brought me to today. Now, there's so much stuff in between. Like, I have this big story about the miracle of the house. There's all this stuff I can tell about that. But as of today, where we are is even now, when I'm at church and they invite us to pray for people, I expect to feel the power of the Holy Spirit come down, touch me first, and then touch a person. I expect it because that was how God introduced his power to me. So when I am at church, like we were just doing communion this past Sunday, and when we do communion, they say get in little clusters. And so it was like 4 of us in a cluster. And you do the wafer and then you do the juice. And then so the guy, he was like, he's going to pray first. And then I said, well, does anybody need prayer for anything? And everybody kind of said what they need prayer for. And I was like, do y'all mind if I pray? And they was like, no. I said, great. So I have one thing in my hand and then I'm just touching the guy next to me. Well, I about threw the juice on everybody because the power was coming down to me, out of me, and then the person I was touching. And it was amazing. It's always amazing to just feel God's power, you know? But I'm reminded that the only reason why that has even happened is because I just kept saying yes. I allowed myself to like deconstruct God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit and the Christian experience. I was like, I don't believe this. I don't believe it. And if you want me to believe it, I need you. I kept saying, prove it. That's what I was saying. And he wasn't mean about it, but I was like, prove it. And he has taken me on this journey of proving it. I mean, God has taken me on the journey of literally proving it. And I'm always in awe. And every time I get an opportunity to tell people about that journey, it brings me so much joy. You know, like I'll back you up and give you the story of the house and then we'll end the episode and we'll do another one. But there was this time when I wanted to move out of where was I living? I think I was had a roommate and I wanted to move into my own place because I had had roommates for a while. And I was searching around trying to find a place. And I had found this beautiful, cute little place in like the heart of Richmond, Virginia. And I was touring it. And I heard God say, you can't live here because Chelsea can't live here. I was like, who? The little girl from church I met? I don't know her and I don't want to live with her, right? I wanted to live in the place that I found. But for whatever reason, I said, okay, I won't get it. So then I'm at work and my coworker was like, well, I have a 3-bedroom house for rent. You want to check it out? And I was like, sure. So she gives me these keys to this house. Now, this house is not awesome. This house is in the ghetto. There were shoes hanging from the power lines right in front of the house. It was not pretty. It reminded me of a house off of the movie Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You know, everything's dirty. The toilet's dirty. Everything is just awful. You know what I'm saying? And I remember walking through that house. It's crazy when I say this. And I heard God say, oh, what was the words? I haven't said it in a while. He said, oh, it's in the Bible. If you are faithful over a few things, I will make you ruler over many things. Now, I feel the Holy Spirit really strongly about that, which I feel like God is saying, stay right there. So we're going to stay right there. And I remember being like, I don't want to live here. I don't want to live here, you know? But I said, yes, I'll take it. And she was charging way more than she should have, but I said, I'll take it. And shortly after that, I get a call. Well, no, I get the keys, and I don't know who is going to live in this house. And I am at church one day. It's a 3-bedroom house. I have enough furniture for like me. That's it. And like, anyway, I'm at church and we're standing outside, and this young girl's talking about being in this very bad situation. All this bad stuff has happened to her and she doesn't have a place to live. And I'm standing out there and I'm like, she's not living with me. No, she is not. And I'm trying to leave and go home, and I cannot move my feet. And I am like, I'm out of here. And I'm like, nope, she's not living with me. And then all of a sudden I blurt out, you can come live with me. And she was like, what? I said, you can come and live with me. And I said, I don't have a bed. I don't have anything, but you can come and live with me. So she was excited. I'm freaking out. And then I start to tell people, hey, so such and such come and live with me. I need furniture. I don't have a bed. I don't have a dress. I don't have anything. And so people started donating all this stuff to me for her. And all of this stuff was happening in the house, colors and all this in the bedroom. And when she came to live with me, she was in the bedroom and she was shocked. And I was like, why? She goes, these are some of my most favorite colors. Butterfly, my favorite thing. But I didn't know it. Just people just started donating stuff. But then shortly after that, I got this phone call. And somebody said, Chelsea's mom just passed away in her house. I'm at work. And I'm like, I barely know Chelsea, but for whatever reason, I got the call. And I told my boss, I said, I need to go. My friend's mom just passed away in her house. And she said, go right ahead. I get in the car, drive 40 minutes to her house. She's there, she's crying. And I am like, hey. And I'm just there, trying to be there. And I see all this like paperwork she's brought out on the table. And I am just like, do you want me to handle this? And she's like, yes. She don't even know me. So here I am putting together all of her mom's financial stuff. I'm just like doing all this stuff while everybody else is emotionally consoling her and all that, figuring out the money she had. I'm just doing all this stuff. And so finally when her family gets there and I got all that stuff situated, I said, okay, Chelsea, I'm going to go back to work. And she said, okay. So then I just feel compelled that she should come and live with me. And I am like, I barely had enough furniture for me. And then the other girl that moved in, I'm like, the other bedroom is way too small. I don't have, But I felt like God was just saying, she's going to come live with you. And I was like, so I text her, hey, where are you going to stay tonight? And she goes, I don't know. I say, do you want to come stay with me? And she said, yeah. And I'm like, oh, crap. She said, yes. I thought she was going to say yes to her family. And so she comes in and she's sleeping in my bed with me. And I'm just like tossing and turning because I can feel the heaviness of how she feels about her mom. And I realized that, I'm not going to be able to get any sleep if she consistently sleeps in my bed. We've got to find a bed for her to sleep in the third bedroom because it was just empty. I was going to turn it into an office. And so I sent a text message out to like the same group. And I'm just like, can anybody help? And one girl says, yes, I have a bed and I have a dresser. You can come pick it up. Great. So we get a truck to go and pick up this bed and dresser. And my God, this bed is from whirlwind. I mean, this is the best bed I have ever seen in my entire life. The bed, the dresser, the mattress. I mean, it's like the best bed I have ever slept on my entire life. It was just amazing. And I was like, where is that going to fit? And so we ended up moving my bed into the office so she could stay there. And I had the bigger bed, which was incredible. The crazy thing I found out a few months later was the girl that gave up her bed, that was her bed. God told her to give that bed up and that he was going to bless her with more than she could ask or think. Somebody months later called her and said, I've got some art for your house. I want to drop it off. And she was like, okay. They pull up to her house in a U-Haul. And she's like, okay, let me see, whatever. They had a house full of furniture for her. How she had blessed me and Chelsea, somebody outfitted her entire house because of her obedience to God. Crazy. And it was just story after story after story of that house to where when I moved, I was just like, it was weird. to leave that house, because it was just such a miracle. I mean, so much stuff happened in that house. I wish I could tell you all of it, but it would be a really long episode. But that is like the kind of foundation for my faith. And so when people say, Kinga, you've got really big faith, it's because I didn't have any. And I chose to challenge God about everything. I even talked to him. I'm not as defiant, so to speak, as I was back then. But when I'm like, God, I just don't understand what is going on with this and that and that and that, I allow myself to be and on this journey with God, because I'm like, if I'm going to go from faith to faith and glory to glory, that means that I am at some level and I'm going to be challenged to believe at this level. And I've got to have a relationship with God that allows me to talk with him through the journey. And then I've got to have experiences that require me to have faith, that then on the other side of it, I am like, wow, look at how God came through, So I have lots and lots and lots of moments where it's like, I don't know where God is, if he's this and this, all that stuff. You know what I mean? But I allow myself to do it. Okay. And so if I could encourage you in anything, is that if you are going to go from faith to faith and glory to glory in your life and in your relationship with God, you have got to go on the intimate journey with him so that you can have a close relationship. That's like, they always say that relationships get closer in conflict. And so that includes with God. And conflict with God is you're challenging, or you're in a challenging season. You're just like, where are you? Whatever. And you're just allowing the whatever to happen so you can go to that next level in your relationship with him. And you're going to constantly be going to the next level in your relationship with him if you allow it to, which is where I am right now. I'm in a season and time where things are awesome and then things are not awesome. And in the areas where they're not awesome, I'm like, God, what is going on? What are you doing? Why is this happening? Why are you allowing this to happen? All this stuff. And so that way he can talk to me and he can help me get to the other side of a thing, because it's like, what is happening is happening. And I get to go on this journey with him. Does that make sense? So hope you enjoyed this. There's a whole lot more I can tell you on my journey of faith. I will do another one at some point, but hope you enjoyed this. If you did, let me know down in the comments. I would love to know.